free college football picks. This is action here for Saturday, September 23rd. Tony T here with our college football pick show here for Saturday's action. We have all 58 games. Before we get to them, just a couple things. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Free College Football Picks. We're updated all season long. Free picks every day from all the major sports like NFL, like Major League Baseball. Of course, lots of live shows over our channel. We've got the Morning Steam live show. We've got the new show with Mindy and Tiffany here with midday plays Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. each time. So check those out. So make sure you also subscribe. Also, if you would support our channel with that like, that thumbs up, we greatly appreciate it. And of course, don't forget to visit our site, Tony'sPicks.com. We're a multi-capper site showcasing top cappers in our industry. Click the links to the hot cappers, get signed up to our long-term passes, like our top performers for the year, Ramon Scott, Joseph Schultz, Collins Brown has been hot the last 3 days, yours truly as well, Nick Vartini, Sean Dinwiddie, of course, probably the hot here in the last 7 days, so is Sean, Hollywood Sam getting in there, guys. Click the links, get signed up to our long-term passes. You'll find our latest premium picks here center of the page. As you'll scroll more, you'll find our tabs here with our best bets, our $15 picks, and our multi-packs offering great value. And you can also purchase our plays a la carte from the pick ticker. There you're going to find team versus team information. And you can save 15% off all premium pick packages, 20% off all premium pick packages when you use that promo code TonyT at checkout. You can access our page by clicking the link in the description. Click the All Cappers tab, get signed up. Always love to hear from you guys, so you can post your picks in the comments. And we are looking for cappers to apply on that home page. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get this one started. Oklahoma versus Cincinnati, college football pick here for action on Saturday. Oklahoma 3-0 after their 66-17 road win at Tulsa. Sooners rushed for nearly 5 yards a carry, but it was a huge day passing the football. Oklahoma held the Golden Hurricane to under 2 yards per rush with 217 yards passing on 27 attempts. They picked off 5 Tulsa passes. Dylan Gabriel, 20 of 31 for 421 yards with 5 touchdowns and a pick. He averaged 13.6 yards per pass attempt. Cincinnati fell to 2-1 after the 31-24 home overtime defeat to Miami, Ohio. Bearcats rushed for 373 yards on 57 attempts. They allowed 4 yards per rush to the Cardinals with 237 passing on 20 attempts. Emory Jones went 18 of 34 for 265 yards and 2 interceptions. Sooners sit 8th in total offense and 83% completion rate on the year, the best in college football. Head coach Brent Venables is getting defense from this team, and they're holding teams at 289 yards a game with only 2.3 yards per rush. Cincinnati is an inexperienced team, returned only 9 starters total, and 3 to the offense play here. Oklahoma minus 13.5. SMU and TCU, college football pick here for Saturday. SMU 2-1 after their 69-0 home victory to FCS Prairie View. Their FBS win came to Louisiana Tech 38-14 with the loss coming at Oklahoma 28-11. Quarterback Preston Stone completes 63% of his passes with 7.8 yards per pass attempt. He has 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He did pass for 250 yards to Oklahoma, but only 5.6 yards per attempt. TCU improved to 2-1, a 36-13 road win at Houston. Horned Frogs rushed for 5 yards per attempt on the Cougars. They limited Houston to under 2 yards per rush, with 225 yards passing on 35 attempts. Chandler Morris, 24 of 37 for 314 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He averaged 8.5 yards per pass attempt. Horned Frogs lack experience on offense with 3 starters back. Respect the 564 yards they've gained on that Cougars defense. The over is hit in their past 3 meetings. Each team was able to put up chunks of yardage on the opposing defense in those games. Play here SMU and TCU over 63.5. Auburn and Texas A&M, college football pick here for action on Saturday. Auburn 3-0 on the year after their 45-13 home victory at FCS Stanford. Their 2 FBS wins came at home to UMass and a 14-10 road win at Cal. Michigan State transfer quarterback Peyton Thorne is completing 68% of his throws with 8.2 yards per attempt. He threw 4 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. Texas A&M 2-1 after their 47-3 home win to UL Monroe. Aggies rushed for 5 yards per attempt and had a huge passing attack. They allowed 4 yards per carry on the ground of the Warhawks with only 95 passing yards on 17 attempts. Connor Wegman, 25 of 29, 337 yards with a touchdown. Season to date, he's averaging 9 yards per attempt. Both teams are experienced. Tigers won the meeting last season 13-10. Dating back to last year, Auburn's allowed 17 or fewer points in 5 of 6 games. Aggies have had issues with penalties this year. Thorne, no stranger to big games. Remember, he played at Michigan State the past few seasons. Play here Auburn, a +7. Army and Syracuse, college football pick for Saturday. Army 2-1 after their 37-29 road win at UTSA. Black Knights ran the football 65 times for 254 yards. They were successful throwing the football. The team allowed nearly 6 yards per rush to the Roadrunners with 239 yards passing in the game on 27 attempts. UTSA starting quarterback Frank Harris did not play. Quarterback Bryson Daly went 7-17 for 133 yards for Army with a touchdown and 7.8 yards per attempt. Triple option, he rushed 24 times for 100 yards and a touchdown. Syracuse is 3-0 after their 35-20 road win at Purdue. Orange rushed for under 3 yards a carry but made big gains in their passing. They held the Boilermakers to under 3 yards a carry but 323 yards passing on 46 attempts. Quarterback Garrett Schrader completed 14-28 for 184 yards and an interception. He rushed it 25 times for 195 yards and 4 touchdowns. Orange had +3 turnover margin. Army's experienced team, they are getting passing production from their quarterback this year. Black Knights defense holding teams to 293 yards a game. Syracuse really not familiar with this triple option. Play here Army +13. Florida State and Clemson college football pick for Saturday. Florida State 3-0 after a 31-29 road win at Boston College. Seminoles had nearly 5 yards per rush in the win. They did allow BC over 3.5 yards per run with 305 yards passing on 34 attempts. Jordan Travis was 16-24 for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 8.8 yards per pass attempt. Clemson is 2-1 on the year with their 48-14 home victory at FAU. Tigers rushed for over 5 yards a carry in the game. They limited the Owls to just over 2 yards per rush with 210 passing yards on 46 attempts. Cade Klubnik, 16-27 for 169 yards, 3 touchdowns. He averaged 6.3 yards per pass attempt. Tigers' struggles at Duke are the major concern here. Blue Devils rushed for 200 yards on 30 carries on this Clemson defense. This is an experienced Seminoles team. Klubnik averaged just 4.9 yards per pass attempt in that Duke loss. Play here Florida State -1.5. Kentucky versus Vanderbilt college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Kentucky improved to 3-0, a 35-3 home victory to Akron. Wildcats rushed for 6 yards a carry, passed the ball well. They limited the Zips to 2 yards per rush with 190 passing yards on 41 attempts. NC State transfer Devin Leary completed 16-26 for 315 yards with 3 touchdowns and a pick. He averaged 12 yards per pass attempt. Vanderbilt drops to 2-2, a 40-37 road defeat at UNLV. Commodores rushed for under 3 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Rebels to just over 3 yards per rush, but 276 passing yards on 37 attempts. A.J. Swan completed just 16-35 for 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. He averaged 8.5 yards per attempt. Vanderbilt blew an early 17-0 lead. They knock out the Rebels starting quarterback. Then in comes a redshirt freshman, and it was a comeback, right? It was a back-to-back road spot for Vanderbilt. Kentucky experienced offensively, but only 5 returned to the defense. Commodores are moving the football for 402 yards, 289 a game through the air. Kentucky's played a really weak schedule, and they play their first road game here. Play here Vanderbilt +14. Rutgers versus Michigan in college football pick here for Saturday. Rutgers moved to 3-0 after a 35-16 home victory to Virginia Tech. Scarlet Knights rushed for 256 yards on 34 carries. They allowed over 3 yards per rush to the Hokies with 190 passing on 32 attempts. Quarterback Gavin Wimsatt hit on 7-16 passes for 46 yards and a touchdown. He averaged only 2.9 yards per attempt. On the season, he is completing 51% of his passes, facing the likes of Northwestern, Temple, and Virginia Tech. Michigan 3-0 after a 31-6 home victory to Bowling Green. Wolverines rushed for over 5.5 yards a carry. They held the Falcons just over 2 yards per rush with 124 passing yards on 21 attempts. J.J. McCarthy, 8 of 13 for 143 yards with 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He did average 11 yards per pass attempt. Scarlet Knights lack experience on offense. The Wolverines pounded Rutgers last year 52-17, holding the Scarlet Knights to just 14 rushing yards. The passing game is just so miserable for Rutgers. One-dimensional approach won't work here. Play here will be Michigan -24.5. Tulsa and Northern Illinois college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Tulsa fell to 1-2 after their 66-17 home defeat to Oklahoma. Golden Hurricane rushed for under 2 yards per attempt. They did allow the Sooners nearly 5 yards per rush with 476 yards passing on 35 attempts. Quarterback Braylon Braxton missed the game due to an ankle injury. Sophomore Cardell Williams came in relief at quarterback, went 11-17 for 196 yards with 2 touchdowns but 2 interceptions. He did average 11.5 yards per attempt. Roman Fuller started the game and threw for 3 interceptions and was replaced immediately. Northern Illinois 1-2 after the 35-11 road defeat in Nebraska. Huskies' offense was anemic here, 149 yards with 26 rushing on 22 attempts. Defensively, they surrendered 5 yards per rush to the Cornhuskers with 158 yards passing on 24 attempts. Rocky Lombardi, 11-28 passing for 73 yards and an interception. He averaged just 2.6 yards per attempt. Tulsa is an inexperienced team with 4 starters on offense and 5 back on the defense, but NIU was held to 11 points the week prior at home to FCS Southern Illinois. Scheduled relief here for Tulsa after facing Washington and Oklahoma in back-to-back games. Huskies sit 131st in the nation in yards per play. Golden Hurricanes bringing a bit of more offense to the table. Play here Tulsa plus 3.5. Virginia Tech and Marshall College, a football pick. Here we go. Action Saturday. Virginia Tech fell to 1-2 with a 35-16 road defeat at Rutgers. Hokies have lost 8 of 10 dating back to last season. They rushed for over 3 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed Rutgers only 46 yards passing on 256 rushing yards on 34 attempts. Quarterback Grant Wells missed the game due to injury. Baylor transfer Kyron Drones hit 19 of 32 for 190 yards and a touchdown and a pick. He averaged just 5.9 yards per attempt. Marshall 2-0 after a 31-13 road victory at East Carolina. Third and Herd have won 7 straight dating back to last season. They gained over 3 yards per rush. Defensively, the team allowed nearly 4 yards per run to the Pirates, but only 123 passing yards on 31 attempts. Cam Fancher 15-28 for 178 yards, averaging 6.4 yards per attempt. Thunder and Herd is inexperienced on defense with only 4 starters back. Virginia Tech defense has been strong defending the pass. If Wells can't start, Drones is comfortable under center now with some series under his belt. Hokies have won 4 straight in this series. Thunder and Herd in week 1 got past Albany at home, but only by 4 points. Play here Virginia Tech plus 7.5. Western Kentucky and Troy college football pick. Here we go. This is action here for Saturday. Western Kentucky fell to 2-1 with a 63-10 road win at Ohio State. Hilltoppers struggled on the ground and through the air offensively. The team surrendered 6.5 yards per rush to the Buckeyes with 358 passing on 27 attempts. Quarterback Austin Reed, 21-37 for 207 yards with a touchdown and pick. Reed averaged only 5.6 yards per attempt. Troy 1-2 with their 16-14 home defeat to James Madison. The Trojans rushed for negative 12 yards on 19 carries. They held the Dukes to 3 yards per rush with 200 passing yards on 26 attempts. Gunnar Watson at 25-46 for 332 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. He averaged 7.2 yards per attempt. Hilltoppers are inexperienced on defense, returning 4 starters. The Trojans won the meeting on the road last season by 7 with a strong rushing performance. WKU surrendering 490 yards defensively per game, sitting 129th in the nation. Opponents are rushing for 5.7 yards per carry on them, which ranks 128th nationally. Play here Troy -3. Western Michigan and Toledo college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Western Michigan fell to 1-2, a 41-10 road defeat to Iowa. Broncos rushed for 3 yards at carry and struggled in the passing game. They surrendered over 6 yards per run to the Hawkeyes with 133 passing yards on 12 attempts. Trayson Bouguer completed 5 of 16 passes for 124 yards and a touchdown. Toledo 2-1 with their 21-17 home victory to San Jose State. Rockets rushed for nearly 6 yards per attempt. They held the Spartans to under 2 yards per rush with 228 yards passing on 41 attempts. Correct, Daquan Finn went 13-23 for 92 yards with a touchdown and interception. He averaged only 4 yards per attempt but rushed for 62 yards and a touchdown. Rockets did have a -2 turnover margin. Western Michigan was inexperienced on defense with 2 starters returning. Finn showing more accuracy in his 3rd season as a starter. In the Broncos' passing game, a concern here, they sit just 122nd in the nation in yards per attempt. Rockets' defense has played well, sitting 26th in the nation. Play here Toledo -20.5. Colorado versus Oregon college, a football pick here for action on Saturday, Colorado 3-0 on the year after their 43-35 home overtime victory to Colorado State Rams. Buffs rushed for under 3 yards a carry and another huge passing performance. They limited the Rams to under 3 yards per rush with 397 yards passing on 41 attempts. It was a +2 turnover margin for the Buffaloes. Shedeur Sanders completed 38 of 47 passes for 348 yards with 4 touchdowns and an interception. On the season, he is averaging 9.2 yards per attempt. Oregon 3-0 after their 55-10 home victory at Hawai'i. Ducks rushed for 7 yards a carry. They held the Warriors to 3 yards per rush with 142 passing yards on 44 attempts. Bo Nix 21 of 27 for 247 yards with 3 touchdowns. He averaged 9.1 yards per attempt. Buffaloes are second in the nation in passing offense, averaging 9.1 yards per attempt. They've beaten 2 Power 5 conference teams and a team from the Mountain West. The Ducks did give up 282 yards passing Texas Tech and kind of looked beatable in that game. Play here Colorado +21. BYU versus Kansas, college football pick here Saturday. BYU 3-0 on the year after their 38-31 road win at Arkansas. Cougars rushed for under 3 yards a carry in the win. They allowed 4.5 yards per rush to the Razorbacks with 247 passing on 35 attempts. Keaton Slovis 13 of 25 for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Kansas 3-0 after a 31-24 road win at Nevada. Jayhawks rushed for 4.5 yards to carry in the game. They did surrender nearly 4 yards per rush to the Wolfpack, but only 113 yards passing on 22 attempts. Jalen Daniels, 21 of 27 for 298 yards with 11 yards per attempt. Both teams are experienced. Jayhawks are 17th in the nation in total offense by averaging 501 yards a game. They did show well in their 34-23 home win to Illinois. Cougars are struggling to run the football by averaging 2.7 yards per rush. Kansas sits 27th ranked defensively by holding foes to 274 yards a game. The Jayhawks do a good job of putting pressure on the quarterback, 3 sacks per game average. Cougars just 118th in total offense with poor offensive showing at home against Sam Houston State. Back-to-back road game for the Cougars as well. Play here Kansas -9. Maryland versus Michigan State, college football pick Saturday. Maryland 3-0 after a 42-14 home victory to Virginia. Terrapins rushed for nearly 4 yards a carry with strong passing performance. They limited the Cavaliers to 3 yards per rush with 263 yards passing on 39 attempts. Talia Tagovailoa, 19 of 30 for 342 yards with a touchdown and 11.5 yards per pass attempt. Maryland had a +4 turnover margin and spotted the Cavaliers' 14-zip lead. Michigan State fell to 2-1, a 41-7 home defeat to Washington. Spartans were down 35-zip at the half. The team rushed for 2 yards per attempt. They surrendered 6 yards a carry on the ground to the Huskies with 538 yards passing on 39 attempts. Noah Kim just 12 of 31, 136 yards with an interception, 4.4 yards per pass attempt. Last year, Maryland won at home 27-13 behind 489 yards of offense. Terrapins has passed well against the Spartans the past 2 seasons, combined for 664 yards. Just a bad offensive showing for Michigan State in their first game against a Power 5 school. Spartans defense just sees another Heisman quality quarterback in this spot. Remember, the Michigan State pass defense has been bad here now for the previous 2 seasons as well. Play here Maryland -7. Texas Tech and West Virginia college football pick for Saturday. Tech is 1-2 after a 41-3 home victory to FCS Tarleton State. Red Raiders have FBS losses to 35-33 at Wyoming and home 38-30 at Oregon. Quarterback Tyler Shaw completed 61% of his passes, a career low though, 6.9 yards per pass attempt. He threw 4 interceptions. West Virginia 2-1, a 17-6 home victory at Pittsburgh. Mountaineers rushed for under 4 yards per carry. They held Pittsburgh to 4 yards per rush, 81 yards passing on 20 attempts. Garrett Green was injured through 2 passes. He sat out practice on Tuesday with his foot injury. Nico Marshall went 6 of 9 for 60 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Red Raiders experienced on offense with all 11 starters back. Mountaineers quarterback situation pretty bad shape now. West Virginia's averaged only 16.5 points a game against FBS opponents. Play here Texas Tech -6. Boston College versus Louisville college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Boston College 1-2 after the 31-29 home defeat to Florida State. Eagles rushed for over 3.5 yards a carry. They surrendered nearly 5 yards a carry to Florida State with 212 passing on 24 attempts. Thomas Castellanos 20 of 33 for 305 yards with a touchdown and a pick. He averaged 9.2 yards per pass attempt in the game. He is a threat to run the football. He had 95 yards rushing and a touchdown. Louisville 3-0 after their 21-14 road victory in Indiana. Cardinals were able to hold their 21-zip halftime lead. The team rushed for over 4.5 yards a carry. They limited the Hoosiers to under 3 yards per rush with 299 yards passing on 34 attempts. Jack Plummer, 13-23 for 238 yards with a touchdown and interception. He did run for 42 yards with key rushes in the closing minutes to run out the clock. Castellanos has shown improvement under center. Louisville needed a goal line stand late after blowing a 21-zip lead. They were held scoreless in the second half. BC does a good job in pass defense. Louisville is inexperienced on offense with 6 starters back. Play here at Boston College, plus 14. FAU versus Illinois college football pick for Saturday. FAU 1-2 after their 48-14 road defeat at Clemson. Owls rushed for under 3 yards a carry. On defense, they surrendered over 5 yards per rush to the Tigers with 204 passing yards on 33 attempts. Quarterback Casey Thompson is out for the season with that ACL injury. Central Michigan transfer Daniel Richardson in relief went 18 of 32 for 120 yards and an interception, but only 3.8 yards per attempt. The Owls had a -3 turnover margin. Illinois fell to 1-2. With their 30-13 home defeat to Penn State, Final Illini ran for just over 2 yards a carry and were productive through the air. On defense, they allowed 4.1 yards per rush to the Nittany Lions with 219 passing yards on 37 attempts. It was a -5 turnover margin for the Illinois. Quarterback Luke Altmaier was 15 of 28 for 163 yards with 4 interceptions. He has thrown 7 picks in his 3 games. Back-to-back road games for FAU. In their other loss, they were held to 10 points to Ohio at home. FAU 110th in the nation in total offense. Final Illini good, and Final Illini ground and pound will control line of scrimmage in this one. Late scoring to get this cover. Owls running backs are banged up and receiver burden is questionable. Play here Illinois -14. Georgia Southern versus Ball State college football pick here for Saturday's action. Georgia Southern 2-1 after their 35-14 road defeat at Wisconsin. Eagles rushed for less than 3 yards an attempt. They surrendered over 5 yards per carry to the Badgers with 244 yards passing on 31 attempts. Davis Brin, the Tulsa transfer, 33 of 52 for 385 yards passing with a touchdown, but 5 interceptions. Georgia Southern a -6 turnover margin in the game. Ball State 1-2 after their 45-7 home win to FCS Indiana State. They've had losses by 42 to Georgia, 30 to Kentucky, all on the road in their FBS games. Quarterback Caden Simonza completing 66% of his passes with 6.1 yards per attempt this year. Brin's turnovers are a concern here. The Cardinals are holding teams to 335 yards a game with Georgia and Kentucky on their schedule. Play here at Ball State +7. Louisiana Tech and Nebraska college football pick for Saturday. Louisiana Tech 2-2 after a 40-37 home defeat to North Texas. Bulldogs posted over 5 yards per rush in the game. Defensively, they did surrender over 5 yards a carry to the Mean Green with 313 passing yards on 41 attempts. Hank Bachmeier, 6 of 11 for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was forced to exit the game due to injury and is questionable here. Jack Turner in relief, 9 of 14 for 145 yards and a touchdown, averaging 10.4 yards per pass attempt. Nebraska improved to 1-2, a 35-11 home victory in Northern Illinois. Cornhuskers had a really good game on the ground, 5 yards per carry average, 158 yards passing on 24 attempts. They held the Huskies to just over 1 yard per rush with 123 passing yards on 36 attempts. Jeff Sims missed the game with that ankle injury. He missed practice on Sunday. Sophomore Henrik Harburg went 14 of 24 for 158 yards with 2 touchdowns. He averaged 6.6 yards per pass attempt. Bulldogs in their FBS games allowed 40 to North Texas, 38 at SMU. Cornhuskers sit 30th in total defense, holding teams just 1.7 yards per run. Opponents averaging just 5.8 yards per pass attempt here on Nebraska. Louisiana Tech allowing 5 yards a carry on the ground defensively. Possible backup quarterback play here for Louisiana Tech. Really big difference facing one of the worst defenses in college football. North Texas now facing Nebraska. Only 4 starters returned on defense for the Bulldogs. Play here Nebraska -10. Minus the 19.5. Miami and Temple college football pick for Saturday. Miami 3-0 after a 48-7 home win to FCS Bethune-Cookman. Their wins in the FBS came to Miami, Ohio by 35, and a home 48-33 victory to Texas A&M. Hurricanes had a huge pass performance in the win against the Aggies with 374 yards and a +2 turnover margin. Tyler Van Dyke is completing 76% of his passes with 11 yards per attempt. Temple 2-1 with their 41-9 home victory to FCS Norfolk State. In their FBS games, the Owls beat Akron at home by 3 and a 29-point road defeat at Rutgers. Temple allowed 452 yards to the Scarlet Knights in defeat with 254 rushing yards on 52 carries. Correct, E.J. Warner is completing only 52% of his passes with 6.4 yards per pass attempt. He completed only just 42% in the loss to Rutgers with 2 interceptions and a 4.3 yards per pass attempt average. Miami's offense clicking here, gaining 511 yards a game. They sit 6th in the nation with 8.3 yards per play. Temple struggles in pass defense, allowing 13.2 yards per completed pass. Warner's lack of accuracy, a massive concern here. Play here, Miami, minus 24. New Mexico versus UMass college football pick here for Saturday. New Mexico fell to 1-2 with their 27-17 home defeat to Mexico State. Lobos rushed for nearly 5 yards a carry. They did allow 6 yards per rush to the Aggies with 220 passing yards on 15 attempts. UAB transfer DeAndre Hopkins here, 20 of 39 for 247 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 6.3 yards per attempt. UMass is 1-3 after a 19-17 road defeat at Eastern Michigan. Minutemen rushed for nearly 4 yards a carry. Defensively, they surrendered nearly 10 yards per rush to the Eagles with 157 passing yards on 26 attempts. They had a -3 turnover margin. Carlos Davis, 23 of 41 for 340 yards with a touchdown and 3 interceptions. Davis saw action due to the injury to Tyson Fomanata, who is questionable here. Lobos an inexperienced team with 2 starters returning on defense. New Mexico has lost 9 straight against FBS opponents, held to 17 or fewer points on all 9 losses. They failed to cover the spread in all 9 of those losses as well. Common opponents, New Mexico State. UMass earned an 11-point victory on the road. Lobos 1-10 to the spread, facing teams that complete 58% of their passes or greater. Play here, UMass -3. Ohio versus Bowling Green college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Ohio 3-1 after their 10-7 home victory at Iowa State. Bobcats rushed for 3 yards per attempt. They limited the Power 5 conference opponents to under 2 yards per carry with 233 yards passing on 24 attempts. Quarterback Curtis O'Rourke 16 of 32 for 135 yards with a touchdown and only 4.2 yards per attempt. Bobcats had a +2 turnover margin on the strength of 2 intercepted passes. Bowling Green 1-2, a 31-16 road defeat at Michigan. Falcons rushed for just over 2 yards per carry. Defensively, they allowed nearly 7 yards per rush here to the Wolverines with 143 yards passing on 13 attempts. Connor Bazelak missed the game against Michigan with a leg injury. He was seen wearing a leg brace. Camden Orth completed 8 of 11 passes, 91 yards and 8.3 yards per pass attempt until getting injured. They turned to third-string quarterback Hayden Tomasek, who threw 2 interceptions, 3.3 yards per attempt average. Bowling Green has only 5 starters returning on defense. Ohio's experienced on offense. Ohio 6th nationally in total defense. They hold teams to 2.4 yards per run, 5.9 yards per pass attempt. Bowling Green quarterback situation pretty bad. The Bobcats 7-0 to the spread, facing teams that allow 8 yards per pass attempt or higher. Play here will be on Ohio -13. Ole Miss and Alabama college football pick for action on Saturday. Mississippi 3-0 after their 48-23 home victory to Georgia Tech. Rebels rushed for over 8 yards a carry. They limit the Yellow Jackets to 3.5 yards per carry with 307 yards passing on 42 attempts. Jackson Dart 10 of 18 for 251 yards and a touchdown. He also averaged 14 yards per pass attempt. Dart also rushed for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alabama 2-1 after their 17-3 road win at USF. Clemson Tide rushed for nearly 5 yards a carry with massive struggles in the passing game. They allowed 3.5 yards per rush to the Bulls with 87 yards passing on 28 attempts. So the defense still hanging in there. Jalen Monroe was benched last week. He may return under center after ineffectiveness by backups Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson. Crimson Tide is not experienced with 5 starters returning on both sides. Dart's running ability, a strength at quarterback, as this has been a really difficult for a Saban defense to defend against. Rebels are 8th in the nation with 8.2 yards per play. Quarterback situation for the Crimson Tide a concern. Ole Miss 6-0 to the spread when they score 28 or greater points. Player Ole Miss +7. UCLA and Utah college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday, UCLA 3-0 after their 59-7 home victory to FCS North Carolina Central. Bruins have wins to mid-major schools. Coastal Carolina by 14. San Diego State on the road by 25. Freshman quarterback Dante Moore in his FBS games, completing 61% of his passes for 11 yards per attempt. Utah 3-0 after that 31-7 home victory to FCS Weber State. The Utes have 2 wins against Power 5 schools here. They beat Florida by 13 at home. They go on the road, beat Baylor by 7. Quarterback Cameron Rising has missed the first 3 games of the year while recovering from knee surgery. Nate Johnson in his FBS games, completing 82% of his passes with 8 yards per pass attempt. Utes defense has been outstanding as they sit 18th in the nation by allowing 271 yards a game. Utah's played a tougher schedule, and this is the Bruins' first Power 5 opponent. Playing in Utah has been a house of horror for the Bruins, getting outscored the past 3 visits by 141-44. Play here Utah minus 4.5. Georgia Tech and Wake Forest college football pick Saturday. Georgia Tech 1-2 after that 48-23 road defeat at Ole Miss. Yellow Jackets rushed for over 3 yards a carry. Defensively, they allowed Ole Miss 550 yards with 299 yards rushing on 37 attempts. Georgia Tech surrendered 251 passing yards on 19 attempts. Haynes King 28-41 for 307 yards with 2 touchdowns. He averaged 7.5 yards per attempt. Wake Forest 3-0, a 27-24 road win at Old Dominion. Neiman Deacons ran for just over 2 yards a carry, which with production in the passing game, they held the Monarchs to under 2 yards per rush with 250 yards passing on 27 attempts. Mitch Griffiths, 24-41 passing for 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. He averaged 7.6 yards per attempt. 2 strong offensive teams here. Georgia Tech is 117th in the nation in total defense, allowing 6.4 yards per rush. The play here, Georgia Tech and Wake Forest over 60. UTSA and Tennessee college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. UTSA 1-2 with their 37-29 home defeat to Army. Roadrunners ran for nearly 6 yards per attempt. They surrendered nearly 4 yards and carried Army with 188 yards passing on 18 attempts. Frank Harris missed the game with an injured toe in his day-to-day. Eddie Lee Marburger completed 17-25 for 239 yards with 3 touchdowns and averaged 9.6 yards per attempt. Tennessee fell to 2-1 with their 29-16 road defeat in Florida. Volunteers rushed for 3.3 yards a carry. They allowed about 4.5 yards per rush to the Gators with 166 passing yards on 24 attempts. Joe Milton, 20 of 34 for 287 yards with 8.4 yards per attempt. He had 2 touchdowns and a pick. UTSA had trouble getting off the field against Army. Harris was ineffective when healthy in the opening loss at Houston. There could be a backup on the field for UTSA at quarterback. They put just 14 points up on Houston. Play your Tennessee minus 20.5. Duke and UConn college football pick. Here we go for action on Saturday. Duke 3-0 after a 38-34 home victory to Northwestern. Blue Devils, they rushed for over 6 yards a carry. That's been their strength, running that football. You saw that against Clemson. They held the Wildcats at 3.5 yards per rush, 163 passing yards on 40 attempts. Riley Leonard, 15 of 20 for 219 yards, 11 yards per attempt. When you can run, you can put up these type of numbers. He ran for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. Connecticut 0-3. A 24-17 home defeat to FIU. It's been a lot of close losses for them. Huskies rushed for nearly 4.5 yards a carry. They held FIU to under 3 yards per rush, but 284 passing yards on 27 attempts. Daquan Roberson, that Penn State transfer, he went 15 of 32, 170 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 5.3 yards per pass attempt. Dating back to last year, Connecticut scored 17 or fewer points. Duke experienced with 10 starters back on offense. The team is 7th in yards per rush in the nation at 6.3. and averaging 7.2 yards per play, ranking 19th in the nation. UConn, 117th in the nation in run defense. UConn's offense, 117th in the nation, averaging just 4.8 yards per play, which is also 117th in the nation. Player will be Duke, minus 21. Central Michigan and South Alabama college football pick. Here we go, action on Saturday. Central Michigan 1-2 after their 41-17 road defeat at Notre Dame. Chippewas rushed for nearly 4 yards a carry. Defensively, they surrendered over 4 yards per rush to the Fighting Irish with 342 passing yards on 28 attempts. Starting quarterback Bernie Emanuel missed the game. The illness, Emanuel is completing only 50% of his passes with 7.8 yards per attempt with 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. South Alabama 2-1 after their 33-7 road win at Oklahoma State. Jaguars rushed for 5 yards a carry. Defensively, they held the Cowboys at 208 yards with 114 passing on 35 attempts. Carter Bradley went 10 of 16 for 152 yards with 2 touchdowns. He averaged 9.5 yards per attempt. Central Michigan inexperienced on offense with 4 starters back. This is an experienced Jaguars team with 9 starters back on both sides. Quarterback accuracy an issue as they sit 131st in the nation in completion percentage. Chippewas run at a high volume but average only 3.9 yards per attempt. Jaguars rush for 5 yards a carry and a really good 8.3 yards per pass attempt. Play here will be South Alabama here at minus 15. Eastern Michigan and Jacksonville State's college football pick. Here we go for action on Saturday. Eastern Michigan improved to 2-1, a 19-17 home victory at UMass. Eagles rushed for over 9 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed 4 yards per rush to the Minutemen with 340 passing on 41 attempts. EMU had a +3 turnover margin. Austin Smith, 13 of 26 for 157 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 6 yards per attempt and rushed for 45 yards. Jacksonville State 2-1 after the 30-16 road defeat at Coastal Carolina. Gamecocks rushed for nearly 4 yards a carry in the loss. Defensively, they allowed nearly 3 yards per rush to the Chanticleers with 268 yards passing on 29 attempts. Zion Webb, 9 of 18, 150 yards, 8.3 yards per pass attempt. The Eagles are really struggling offensively, averaging 270 yards a game, which is 130th in the nation. Gamecock defense playing well and defending the run. Eastern Michigan was inexperienced on offense, only 4 starters back. Eagles are allowing 4.7 yards per rush, and the Gamecock's strength is running the football under Rich Rod as head coach. Play here Jacksonville State -6. Liberty and FIU college football pick Saturday. Liberty 3-0 after a 55-27 road win at Buffalo. Flames rushed for over 6 yards per carry. They held the Bulls to under 3 yards per rush with 276 yards passing on 51 attempts. Flames had a +2 turnover margin. Caden Salter, 16 of 26 for 344 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 13 yards per pass attempt. He rushed for 66 yards and a touchdown. FIU 3-1 after their 24-17 road win at Connecticut. Golden Panthers rushed for under 3 yards a carry. They allowed over 4 yards per rush here to the Huskies with 170 passing yards on 32 attempts. Freshman quarterback Keon Jenkins, 15 of 27 for 284 yards with 2 touchdowns and 10.5 yards per pass attempt. Flames 18th in the nation in total offense. They are rushing for 5.3 yards a carry, while FIU allows 4.4 yards per rush, sitting 114th in the nation in total defense. Golden Panthers completion rate 53%, which is 117th in the nation. Play here Liberty -10.5. Oklahoma State and Iowa State college football pick here for Saturday. Oklahoma State 2-1 after that 33-7 home defeat to South Alabama. Cowboys rushed for just over 3 yards a carry and were miserable in the passing game. They surrendered 5 yards per rush to the Jaguars with 152 yards passing on 16 attempts. Alan Bowman went 6 of 12 for 42 yards and an interception with 3.5 yards per attempt. Garrett Rangel and Gunnar Gundy did see action in this 3-quarterback carousel. The Cowboys totaled 114 passing yards on 35 attempts. Oklahoma State had a -2 turnover margin. Iowa State 1-2 with their 10-7 road defeat at Ohio. Cyclones rushed for less than 2 yards a carry against a MAC team. Defensively, they allowed 3 yards per rush to the Bobcats with 135 yards passing on 32 attempts. Iowa State had a -2 turnover margin. Rocco Becht, 17 of 24 for 233 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. He averaged 9.7 yards per attempt. Cowboys did manage to go on the road and beat Arizona State by 12. Against FBS opponents, Cyclones scored 13 in Iowa, 7 in Ohio. Play here will be on Oklahoma State at +3.5. Rice and USF college football pick Saturday. Rice 2-1 after that 59-7 home victory to FCS Texas Southern. Owls had a 27-point loss at Texas and beat Houston by home here 43-41. Quarterback JT Daniels facing FBS teams completed 62% of his throws for 8.1 yards per attempt. He tossed for 4 touchdowns and 3 picks in those 2 games against FBS competition. South Florida 1-2 after their 17-3 home defeat to Alabama. Bulls were tied at 3 at the half. They rushed for 3.5 yards a carry with really poor passing performance. USF surrendered nearly 5 yards a carry to the Crimson Tide with 107 passing yards on 23 attempts. Byron Brown, 14 of 28 for 87 yards and a pick. He averaged 3.1 yards per attempt at Alabama, 4.9 at Western Kentucky. USF's inexperienced on offense with 4 starters back. The Bulls are a high-volume rushing team with an average of 50 rushes per game or 226 yards a game. The Owls allow nearly 4 yards per rush to their opponents. Houston rushed for 4.5 yards a carry on the Owls. I just respect the defensive performance here against Alabama. Play here will be USF plus 2.5. Sam Houston State and Houston in college football pick. Here we go for Saturday. Sam Houston State here 0-2 after their 13-3 home defeat to Air Force. Bearcats gained just over 1 yard per rush, 44 passing yards on 14 attempts. They allowed 244 yards rushing to the Falcons on 59 carries with 14 passing yards. Keegan Shoemaker 8 of 14 for that 44 yards, 3.1 yards per attempt. Houston fell to 1-2, a 36-13 home defeat to TCU. Cougars rushed for over under 2 yards a carry. They surrendered 564 yards to the Horned Frogs with 5 yards per rush, along with 314 yards passing on 37 attempts. Donovan Smith, 17 of 35 for 225 yards with 2 interceptions and 6.4 yards per attempt. Sam Houston State is in their first season in FBS. They are 133rd in the nation in total offense by averaging only 133 yards a game. Bearcats 13th in total defense, holding foes to 258 yards a game. Player will be Sam Houston State and Houston under 38. Arkansas versus LSU college a football pick. Here we go. Action for Saturday. Arkansas fell to 2-1, a 38-31 home defeat to BYU. Razorbacks rushed for 4.5 yards a carry in the game. They held the Cougars under 3 yards per rush with 204 passing yards on 26 attempts. KJ Jefferson, 24 of 35 for 247 yards with 7.1 yards per pass attempt. He had a touchdown and a pick. LSU improved to 2-1 with their 41-14 road win at Mississippi State. Tigers rushed for over 4 yards a carry in the game. They allowed over 4 yards per rush to the Bulldogs with 107 passing yards on 29 attempts. Jane Daniels, 30 of 34 for 361 yards and touchdowns. Razorbacks are defending well, holding foes to 257 yards a game. That's ranking 12th in the nation. They are holding opponents to 1.7 yards per rush. Passing game efficient, 72% completions, 8.3 yards per pass attempt. Play here, Arkansas plus the 18. Iowa State and Notre Dame college football pick. Here we go. Saturday's action. Iowa State 3-0. It was a 63-10 home victory at Western Kentucky. The Buckeyes rushed for over 6.5 yards a carry. They did limit the Hilltoppers to under 3 yards a carry, and with 204 yards passing on 39 attempts. Kyle McCord completed 19 of 23 for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. He averaged 14 yards per pass attempt. Buckeyes had a +2 turnover margin in the win. Now Notre Dame 4-0, a 41-17 home victory to Central Michigan. Fine Irish ran all over CMU for 6 yards a carry. They allowed under 4 yards per rush to the Chippewas with 137 yards passing on 20 attempts. Sam Hartman, 16 of 26 for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. Both teams have single wins against Power 5 schools. But Hartman's experience the key here. McCourt in 2 seasons as a backup saw really no high leverage situations, just kind of filling in garbage time. Play here Notre Dame +3. Texas and Baylor college football pick. Here we go for action Saturday. Texas 3-0. After that 31-10 home victory in Wyoming. Longhorns ran for 6 yards a carry. They surrendered 4 yards per rush to the Cowboys with 136 yards passing on 28 attempts. Quinn Ewers went 11 of 21 for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged a season low 6.2 yards per attempt and 52% completion rate. That was also a season low. Baylor 1-2, a 30-7 home victory to FCS LIU. Bears have home losses to Texas State by 9 and to Utah by 7. Sawyer Robertson is completing 45% of his passes for 7.2 yards per attempt. He has a touchdown with 3 interceptions. Now, Robertson is the backup as the Bears lost Blake Shapen to injury. Baylor has defended well. They sit 19th in the nation in pass defense. Bears are rushing here for 4.6 yards per attempt, but just not comfortable laying over 2 touchdowns on a road conference game after Ewers' last performance. Play here Baylor +15. Mississippi State and South Carolina college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. Mississippi State fell to 2-1, a 41-14 home defeat to LSU. Bulldogs rushed for 4.5 yards a carry with really poor production throwing the football. The team surrendered 4.1 yards per run to the Tigers with 367 yards passing on 37 attempts. Mississippi State allowed 4 sacks and were down 24-7 at the half. Will Rogers completed a season low here, 11 of 28 for 103 yards and 3.7 yards per attempt. The offensive coordinator trying to change things. They should go back to resort the way they used to run their offense. South Carolina drops to 1-2, a 24-14 road defeat to Georgia. The Gamecocks rushed for over 3 yards per attempt. They did allow 4.5 yards to carry to the Bulldogs with 289 yards passing on 35 attempts. Spencer Rattler, 22 of 42 for 256 yards with a touchdown and 2 picks. He averaged 6.1 yards per pass attempt. Gamecocks couldn't hold their 14-3 halftime lead. They did have a -2 turnover margin in the game. But here we got both defense inexperienced with 4 starters back. Both teams played poorly against the pass. Mississippi State ranks 117th in the nation in pass defense, and South Carolina 105th. Play here will be on Mississippi State and South Carolina over 48.5. Memphis and Missouri college football pick. Here we go. Saturday's action game played on neutral site in the Dome in St. Louis. Memphis 3-0 after their 28-24 home victory to Navy. Tigers rushed for over 6 yards a carry in the game. They surrendered 6 yards a carry to Navy with 133 passing yards on 20 attempts. Junior quarterback Seth Hennigan, 23 of 35 for 217 yards with 6.2 yards per attempt. He had a touchdown and interception. He did rush for 2 touchdowns. Hennigan also lost a fumble. Missouri 3-0 after their 30-27 home victory to Kansas State. They won on a 61-yard field goal as time expired. The team posted under 3 yards a carry. They allowed nearly 4 yards per rush to the Wildcats with 270 passing yards on 39 attempts. Brady Cook, 23 of 35 for 356 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 10.2 yards per pass attempt. Cook took a hit to the knee and is not practiced through Wednesday. Sophomore Sam Horn is the backup and has thrown a total of 7 passes in his 2 seasons. Memphis quarterback situation makes it tough to back them here. Memphis 8th in the nation in total defense by allowing 251 yards a game. They are moving the football for 449 yards a game with 4.8 yards per carry. Play here Memphis plus the 6. Minnesota and Northwestern, a college football pick for Saturday. Minnesota sits 2-1 with their 31-13 road defeat at North Carolina. Golden Gophers rushed for over 5.5 yards a carry, but the passing game stalled. They held the Tar Heels to just under 3 yards per rush with 414 yards passing on 40 attempts. Ethan Kamanis, 11 of 29 for 133 yards and an interception. He averaged only 4.6 yards per attempt in defeat and 4.5 yards per pass in that loss to Nebraska. Northwestern 1-2, a 38-14 road defeat at Duke. Wildcats ran for 3.5 yards a carry. They surrendered 487 yards to the Blue Devils with 268 rushing on 40 attempts. They did allow 210 yards passing to Duke on 20 throws. Eastern Michigan and also Cincinnati transfer Ben Bryant completed just 17 of 34 for 123 yards with a touchdown and pick. He averaged a career low 3.6 yards per attempt. On the year, Bryant career lows in completion rate and yards per pass attempt by wide margins here. Both quarterbacks plays pretty much subpar, back-to-back road games for the Golden Gophers. They put up 13 points in their first 2 games against Power 5 teams. Golden Gophers sit 119th in the nation yards per play at 4.8 and 129th in completion rate, completing just about over half of their passes. Play here Northwestern Northwestern plus 11.5. UAB and Georgia college football pick for action on Saturday. UAB fell to 1-2, a 41-21 home defeat to Louisiana. Blazers fell behind 24-zip at the half. The team rushed for 3 yards a carry. They surrendered 307 rushing yards here to the Raging Cajun on 39 attempts with 288 passing yards on 23 passes. Now, Jacob Zeno, 27 of 38 for 280 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. He averaged 7.4 yards per attempt. He is a threat to run, 17 rushing yards, 17 rushes with 52 yards and a touchdown. Georgia 3-0, a 24-14 home victory to South Carolina. Bulldogs had to overcome that 14-3 halftime deficit. The team rushed for 4.5 yards a carry. They limited the Gamecocks to under 4 yards a carry with 256 passing yards on 42 attempts. Carson Beck, 27 of 35 for 269 yards, 7.7 yards per pass attempt. UAB, they sit 114th defensively in yards per play and 127th in run defense, also 126th against the pass, despite playing no Power 5 teams on their schedule. That explains the big line here. But the Blazers, they're a good passing team. 80% completion rate. Of course, Trent Dilfer, the former NFL quarterback, you've seen him over on the major networks. He's in his first year as a head coach, so he's getting production at the quarterback position. We just need a little bit of production here. So we'll take UAB here plus the 42. Akron and Indiana college football pick for action on Saturday. Akron 1-2 with their 35-3 road defeat to Kentucky. Zips rushed for 2 yards a carry. Defensively, they allowed 6 yards per rush here to the Wildcats with 315 yards passing on 26 attempts. DJ Irons 23-34 for 130 yards and only 3.8 yards per attempt. Indiana 1-2 after their 21-14 home defeat to Louisville. Hoosiers fell behind 21-zip at the half. They rushed for just over 2 yards a carry, but had really good production from their passing game. They did allow over 4.5 yards a carry to the Cardinals with 238 yards passing on 23 attempts. Tennessee transfer Tavon Jackson, 24-34 for 299 yards with a touchdown and interception. He averaged 8.8 yards per pass attempt. Zips sit 131st in the nation in total offense, averaging 260 yards a game. They averaged 6.2 yards per pass attempt, sitting 105th in college football. Indiana defense has played well, sitting 40th in college football by allowing 298 yards a game. Akron runs for only 1.7 yards per pass attempt. The play here will be Akron, Indiana, under 46.5. Buffalo and Louisiana college football pick for Saturday. Buffalo fell to 0-3, a 55-27 home defeat to Liberty. Bulls rushed for under 3 yards a carry. They surrendered 7 yards per rush to the Flames with 344 yards passing on 29 attempts. Cole Snyder, 20-51 for 276 yards with 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, averaging only 5.4 yards per attempt. Louisiana 2-1, a 41-21 road win at UAB. Raging Cajuns went up 24-zip at the half. They rushed for 307 yards on 39 carries. The team held the Blazers to 3 yards a carry with 280 passing yards on 38 attempts. Chandler Fields hit on 2 of 4 for 34 yards and an interception. Starting quarterback Ben Woodridge is out with a foot injury. Fields saw significant action last year, completing 58% of his passes with 6.2 yards per attempt. Bulls defense giving up 510 yards a game with 5.8 yards per pass attempt. They are 131st in the nation in total defense. They are poor defending the pass at 118th in college football. Fields experienced last year the key here. Play here at Louisiana -9. Colorado State and Middle Tennessee State college football pick for Saturday. Colorado State 0-2 after that 43-35 road defeat to Colorado. Rams rushed for under 3 yards a carry in the game. Defensively, they limited the Buffs on the ground to nearly 3 yards a carry, but allowed 348 yards passing on 47 attempts. Braden Fowler Nicolosi hit on 34-47 for 367 yards with 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He averaged 7.8 yards per attempt. Middle Tennessee State 1-2 with their 35-14 home victory to FCS Murray State. They have losses to SEC schools on the road to Alabama by 49 and at Missouri by 4. Quarterback Nicholas Vattiato, facing Power 5 schools this year, is completing 63% of his passes with 5 yards per attempt. He has thrown 3 touchdowns and an interception in those games. Colorado State 0-6 at the spread in these closely lined games when they're either getting 3 or laying 3 or in between. Rams defense looked bad in their home loss to Washington State and at Colorado. They are 128th in the nation in total defense with massive struggles in the passing game. This also figures to be a letdown spot after that emotional overtime loss at Colorado. Play here at Middle Tennessee State here at -3. USC and Arizona State college football pick. Here we go. Action on Saturday. USC improved to 3-0, a 56-10 home victory to Stanford. Trojans stormed out to that 49-3 halftime lead. They rushed for over 6 yards a carry. They did allow over 5 yards per rush to the Cardinal here with 140 passing yards on 25 attempts. Trojans had a +3 turnover margin. Caleb Williams completed 19-21 for 281 yards with 3 touchdowns. He averaged 13.4 yards per attempt. But Williams played only at half with that huge lead. Williams added a 21-yard touchdown run. Arizona State fell to 1-2, a 29-0 defeat at home to Fresno State. Sun Devils rushed for under 2 yards a carry with poor production from their passing game. They allowed 2 yards per rush to the Bulldogs, but 281 yards passing on 49 attempts. ASU had a -8 turnover margin as their 3 quarterbacks threw a total of 5 picks. Correct. Trenton Bouquet is doubtful. Drew Pine is expected to play here. He went 5 of 13 for 52 yards and had 2 interceptions last week. But Pine played 11 games for Notre Dame last year, 65% completion rate, 8 yards per pass attempt. He did suffer an injury during training camp and is finally healthy. Sun Devils 126 in the nation in total offense. But Pine in the second game could get enough points on the board to get this total over. Play here USC and Arizona State over total here of 62 points. California versus Washington college football pick. Here we go. Saturday, Cal 2-1 with their 31-17 home victory to FCS Idaho. Facing FBS opponents, the Golden Bears had a 37-point win at North Texas and lost by 4 at home to Auburn. Quarterback Sam Jackson is completing 54% of his passes with 4.9 yards per attempt. He had 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He has 65 yards rushing and a touchdown. Washington improved to 3-0, a 41-7 road victory at Michigan State. Huskies were up 35-zip at the half. The team rushed for nearly 6 yards a carry. They limited the Spartans to 2 yards per rush with 28 yards passing on 35 attempts. Michael Penix hit on 27-35 for 473 yards with 4 touchdowns, averaging 13.5 yards per attempt. He's not much of a threat to run. Cal has covered the past 4 meetings against the Huskies. Last year, the Huskies came away with that 28-21 win with 374 yards passing by Penix. Golden Bears did play Auburn tough at home. They are running the football effectively, 5.2 yards a carry, and they said 26 in total defense. Play here will be on Cal at plus the 20.5. Iowa versus Penn State college football pick. Here we go. This is action on Friday. Iowa 3-0 after that 41-10 home victory to Western Michigan. Hawkeyes rushed for 254 yards on 43 carries. They limited the Broncos to just over 3 yards per rush with 122 yards passing on 18 attempts. Michigan transfer Cade McNamara went 9 of 19 for 103 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He averaged 5.4 yards per attempt. Penn State 3-0, a 30-13 road win at Illinois. Nittany Lions rushed for 4.1 yards per attempt. They limited the fight Illini to 2 yards a carry with 292 yards passing on 44 attempts. Dre LR 16 of 33 for 208 yards and 6.3 yards per attempt. He rushed for 24 yards. Now, Nittany Lions had a +5 turnover margin by picking off 4 passes. Hawkeyes defense held opponents at 4.3 yards per play, which is 19th best in the nation. McNamara's performance in his initial conference game just a concern. McNamara appeared banged up last week, playing through this questionable status in that injury report. Iowa 122nd in the nation in total offense. Play here Penn State minus 14.5. North Carolina and Pittsburgh college football pick for Saturday. North Carolina improved to 3-0, a 31-13 home victory in Minnesota. Tar Heels rushed for 3 yards a carry. They did allow over 5.5 yards per run to the Golden Gophers with 133 passing yards on 30 attempts. Drake May completed 29 of 40 for 414 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He averaged 10.4 yards per pass attempt. Pittsburgh 1-2 after a 17-6 road defeat at West Virginia. Panthers rushed for under 4 yards a carry with really poor production in the passing game. They allowed 3 yards a carry to the Mountaineers with 60 passing yards on 11 attempts. Phil Jurkovich 8 of 20 for 81 yards and 3 interceptions. He averaged only 4.1 yards per attempt and rushed for 35 yards on 11 carries. Panthers had a -2 turnover margin. Pittsburgh's inexperienced on defense, bringing back just 5 starters. Tar Heels 19th in total offense, averaging 494 yards a game. Pittsburgh 113th in total offense. Jurkovich in his 2 games against FBS competition, completing just 34% of his passes with 5 yards per attempt. Massive quarterback discrepancy here. Play here will be on North Carolina, minus 7.5. UCF versus Kansas State college football pick. Here we go on Saturday. UCF 3-0 after their 48-14 home victory to FCS Villanova. Knights have wins at home. That's at Kent by 50 and Boise State 18-16. Quarterback Timmy McClain is a backup. He's in now due to the injury to John Rice Plumlee. He saw action 11 games in 2021, completing 55% of his passes, 7.2 yards per attempt. He had 7.2 yards per attempt average and rushed for 4 touchdowns there. He's passed for 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. This year he threw 5 passes in mop-up duty against Kent and had a good outing against Villanova, which is a pretty good FCS program. Kansas State fell to 2-1, a 30-27 road defeat at Missouri. Kansas State loses by allowing a 61-yard field goal as time expires. Wildcats gain nearly 4 yards per rush. They limit the Tigers to under 3 yards a carry with 356 yards passing on 36 attempts. Will Howard went 25 of 39 for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns with a pick. He averaged 6.9 yards per attempt. Howard is a game-time decision with undisclosed reasons here. Quarterback 2 is Avery Johnson, who threw 4 passes in Week 1 against FCS opponents. We could be looking at two backup quarterbacks here. McClain and Johnson look like major downgrades. These are good defensive teams, though. Wildcats allow just 1.8 yards per rush. UCF holds opposed to 3.4 yards a carry and only 43% completions, which is best in the nation. Play here at UCF and Kansas State under 52.5. James Madison and Utah State college football pick Saturday. James Madison improved here to 3-0 after their 16-14 road victory at Troy. Dukes rushed for 2.5 yards a carry. They limited the Trojans to minus 12 rushing yards with 333 passing yards on 44 attempts. Jordan McLeod completed 18 of 26 passes for 200 yards with a touchdown. He averaged 7.7 yards per attempt. Utah State fell to 1-2. A 39-21 road defeat to the Air Force. Aggies were down 29-zip early in the second quarter. The team rushed for 2 yards per attempt. They surrendered 344 yards rushing to the Falcons on 64 carries. And, of course, did allow 84 yards passing on 4 attempts. It was a -2 turnover margin for the Aggies. Now, freshman quarterback McKay Hillstead will start at quarterback for the ineffective Cooper Legis. Last week, he completed 18 of 27 passes for 202 yards, 3 touchdowns. He averaged 7.5 yards per attempt. 3 straight road games for James Madison. The Dukes have a really good running attack, averaging 4.8 yards per attempt, and the Aggies were torched on the ground last week. Dukes, while they're tops in college football in rush defense and face a freshman quarterback in his first start, player will be James Madison and Utah State to go under total here of 52.5. UNLV and UTEP college football pick for Saturday. UNLV 2-1 after that 40-37 home victory to Vanderbilt. Rebels overcame that 17-zip deficit in the second quarter. The team rushed for 3.2 yards a carry. They held the Commodores to just over 2 yards per rush with 337 passing yards on 37 attempts. Rebels had a +2 turnover margin. Quarterback Doug Brumfield hit on 2 of 4 passes for 15 yards and an interception. He was forced to leave the game due to injury and is questionable on Saturday. Jaden Maiva, in relief, went 19 of 33 passes for 261 yards with a touchdown and an interception. He averaged nearly 8 yards per pass attempt and rushed for 29 yards with a touchdown. UTEP 1-3, a 31-10 road defeat to Arizona. Miners rushed for under 2 yards a carry. They surrendered 544 yards to the Wildcats with 244 yards rushing in the game. UTEP surrendered 300 passing yards in the game with 32 attempts. Gavin Hardison hit on 15 of 31 for 228 yards with 7.4 yards per attempt. Miners sit 118th in the nation in yards allowed per carry. Opponents running for nearly 5 yards a carry on him. Miners 86 in total offense. Hardison playing on eggshells after getting benched and has been inefficient in all 4 seasons at the school. Rebels look like they found something in Maiva. Play here UNLV -2. Oregon State and Washington State, a college football pick here for Saturday. Oregon State 3-0 after that 26-9 home victory to San Diego State. Beavers rushed for 6 yards a carry with really strong passing. They limited the Aztecs to 2 yards per rush with 256 yards passing on 32 attempts. DJ Ugalale hit on 14 of 30 passes for 284 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. He averaged 9.5 yards per attempt and produced a rushing touchdown. Washington State 3-0 after their 64-21 home victory to FCS Northern Colorado. Their FBS wins came to Wisconsin at home 31-22 and then on the road to Colorado State 50-24. Cameron Ward against his FBS opponents completed 70% of his passes with 5 touchdowns and 8.2 yards per attempt. He rushed in those games for 83 yards on 30 attempts and a touchdown. Cougars have a Power 5 conference win at home to Wisconsin, and Oregon State has not played a Power 5 school. This is Ward's second season with the Cougars, so there's a little bit more continuity in this side. Ugalale plays his first Power 5 game with his new team this year, of course, as a transfer coming from Clemson. I do like Ward's mobility. Play here Washington State here at +3. Arizona and Stanford, a college football pick for action on Saturday. Arizona 2-1 after that 31-10 home victory to UTEP. Wildcats had a huge offensive performance with 544 yards. They rushed for 244 yards on 32 attempts. They limited the Miners to just under 2 yards a carry with 283 yards passing on 35 attempts. Jane DeLaura hit on 23 of 29 for 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. He averaged 9.8 yards per attempt. He had 4 rushes for 33 yards. He has thrown 5 interceptions in 3 games. Stanford 1-2 after their 30-23 home defeat to FCS Cal State Sacramento. Their win came against Hawai'i on the road, 37-24, and they were pounded at USC, 56-10. Cardinal allowed the Hornets to rush for over 4.5 yards per carry and pass for 279 yards on 33 attempts. Quarterback Ashton Daniels in his game against FBS teams completing 63% of his passes with 6.2 yards per attempt. Cardinal is an inexperienced team with 3 starters back on offense and defense. Wildcats sit 21st in total offense this year and run for 6.3 yards per attempt. Stanford sits 124th in total defense, give up 342 yards passing per game, and sitting 129th in college football in that category. Play here will be Arizona minus the 12.5. Appalachian State and Wyoming college football pick. Here we go. This is action for Saturday. App State 2-1 after their 43-28 home victory to East Carolina. Mountaineers rushed for 5 yards a carry with really good production in the passing game. They held the Pirates to under 4 yards a carry with 661 yards passing on 33 attempts. They did pick up off 3 passes. Joey Aguilar completed 17-29 for 241 yards with 3 touchdowns and an interception. He averaged 8.3 yards per attempt. Aguilar is the backup, forced into action here as Ryan Berger was injured in the opener with a finger injury. Wyoming 2-1, a 31-10 road defeat in Texas. Cowboys rushed for 155 yards on 38 attempts. They allowed 6 yards per rush to the Longhorns, 131 yards passing on 21 attempts. Andrew Peasley missed the Texas game with a shoulder injury. His completion rate 58% with 7 yards per attempt. He passed for 5 touchdowns and an interception with 5.3 yards per rush. Of course, he is questionable. His backup is Even Svoboda in relief, went 17-28 for 136 yards and an interception. Mountaineers are moving the football for 456 yards a game. They run heavily. Cowboys have defended the run well. The Mountaineers have struggled to defend the run, surrendering 5.4 yards per rush. The Mountaineers, though, with their backup quarterback, had a really good showing. 43-28 road defeat at North Carolina with Aguilar passing for 275 yards. Player will be App State, -3 in this one. Charlotte and Florida college football pick. Here we go. Saturday. Charlotte fell to 1-2 after a 41-25 home defeat to Georgia State. 49ers gained on the ground here less than 3 yards a carry. They did limit the Panthers to 2.5 yards per rush, but 466 yards passing on 33 attempts. Jalen Jones, 3 of 7 for 11 yards. Trexler Ivy rotated in and out. Here he went 20-28 for 257 yards with a touchdown and interception. He threw for 9.2 yards per attempt. But Florida here 2-1, a 29-16 home victory to Tennessee. The Gators rushed for 183 yards on 43 carries. They held the Vols to just 3.3 yards per rush with 287 yards passing on 34 attempts. Graham Mertz 19-24 for 166 yards with a touchdown. He averaged 6.9 yards per pass attempt. Charlotte, an inexperienced team, 4 starters back on offense, 6 in the defense. Florida 10th in total offense. The 49ers struggled offensively. Charlotte 130th in the nation, gave up 9.4 yards per pass attempt. 122nd in the nation by allowing over 67% completion rate. Gators have been efficient offensively in the passing game. Play here, Florida -28. Kent and Fresno State college football pick for action on Saturday. Kent 1-2 after their 38-10 home victory to Central Connecticut State, an FCS school. Golden Flashes in their FBS game lost 56-6 at UCF and 28-6 at Arkansas. The team is the least experienced in college football this year. Quarterback Michael Alimo in his FBS starts is completing 48% of his passes with 2 interceptions and 6.6 yards per attempt. Fresno State improved to 3-0 after that 29-0 road victory at Arizona State. Bulldogs gained 2 yards per attempt on the ground. On defense, they limited the Sun Devils to under 2 yards per rush, 188 yards passing on 37 attempts. They did give up 6 sacks and had 5 sacks of their own. Mikey Keene went 32 of 49 for 281 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. The UCF transfer averaged 5.7 yards per attempt. The Golden Flashes 121st in the nation in total offense and yards per play. Bulldogs are defending well, and they just shut out a Pac-12 team on the road. Fresno State Bulldogs, inexperienced offensive team, 4 starters back, and they sit 103rd in the nation in yards per play. The play here will be on Kent and Fresno State under 48. Nevada and Texas State college football pick. Here we go. Action Saturday. Nevada fell to 0-3 after their 31-24 home defeat to Kansas. The Wolfpack moved the football on the ground for 4 yards to carry. They held the Jayhawks to just 3.5 yards per rush with 298 yards passing on 27 attempts. Brendan Lewis hit on 15-22 for 113 yards with only 5.1 yards per attempt. Lewis is a running style quarterback who gained 58 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns. Texas State moved to 2-1, a 77-34 home victory to FCS Jackson State. Bobcats in their FBS games beat Baylor 42-31 on the road, then lost the following week at UTSA 20-13. The LSU Auburn transfer quarterback TJ Finley in his FBS games completed 63% of his passes for 8.5 yards per pass attempt and 3 touchdowns. Wolfpacks hit 125th in the nation in total offense, 132nd in total defense. They're giving up 524 yards a game. Bobcats averaging 9.3 yards per pass attempt, ranking 26th in college football. Texas State should really exploit this Wolfpack defense. Play here, Texas State minus 17. Southern Miss and Arkansas State college football pick here for Saturday. Southern Miss fell to 1-2, a 21-3 home defeat to Tulane. Golden Eagles were held under 1 yard per rush. They allowed the Green Wave to nearly 4 yards a carry on the ground with 186 passing yards on 19 attempts. Tulane utilized a backup quarterback with their starter injured. Billy Wiles hit on 19 of 33 for 177 yards with 5.4 yards per attempt. Arkansas State 1-2, a 31-7 home win to FCS Stony Brook. The Red Wolves in their FBS games this season lost 37-3 at home to Memphis, 73-0 at Oklahoma. Quarterback J.T. Shrout in his 2 FBS starts hit on 47% of his passes with 2 interceptions and 4.5 yards per pass attempt. Golden Eagles won the meeting last year 20-19 at home. The Golden Eagles in their other FBS game lost 66-13 at Florida. The teams are running for 6 yards a carry on Southern Miss this year. Red Wolves are rushing for 4.6 yards a carry. Play here, Arkansas State plus 6.5. New Mexico State and Hawai'i college a football pick for Saturday. Mexico State improved to 2-2 with that 27-17 road victory to New Mexico. Aggies rushed for 6 yards per attempt. They surrendered nearly 5 yards a carry to the Lobos with 247 passing yards on 39 attempts. Diego Pavia completed 9 of 14 passes for 203 yards with 2 touchdowns. He averaged 14.5 yards per attempt in the game. Pavia rushed for 96 yards on 11 carries. Hawai'i 1-3 after that 55-10 road defeat in Oregon. Warriors rushed for 3 yards a carry, struggled in the passing game without the Ducks over 7 yards per rush with 333 yards passing on 34 attempts. Brayson Shager, 27 of 43 for 131 yards with a touchdown and an interception. He averaged only 3 yards per attempt. Aggies won the meeting at home last year as the Rainbows had won the previous 9 games. Rainbows have played a tough schedule facing 3 Power 5 conference schools. Spot bad for the Aggies here as they play their 3rd straight road game. The Aggies have struggled in pass defense, allowing 15.3 yards per completion and 8.5 yards per pass attempt. Play here, Hawai'i minus 3. All right, that was our college football pick show here for Saturday. Got you all 58 games. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Free college football picks updated all season long. Free picks every day from all the major sports. NFL, Major League Baseball, lots of live shows on our channel. And don't forget to visit our site, Tony'sPicks.com, for our best plays. Our premium picks are there. Use that promo code TonyT at checkout. You see it there. Save that 20% off. Find the link in the description to get to our page. And, of course, like this video with that thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that. All right, we'll have more picks for you there on Sunday. I'm Tony T. We'll talk to you guys later.